final of European Universities Debating Championship 2016. Today, in opening government, we have Oxford A, in opening opposition, Pepe. In closing government, it's Oxford B, and in closing opposition is CCD Gist A. Judging this debate will be Steve as chair, with him, Sela Neville, Taylor Blackburn, James Clough, Emilia Karlquist, Michael Shapira, and Radu Kotarchea. And the motion for the open final is, this House would nationalize and provide public access to the metadata being gathered by online multinational companies. Metadata is anonymized data about users' activities, e.g. locations, demographics, searches, and consumers' preferences. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Another round of applause for all 4 teams for making this far. And I welcome onto the stage an opening government, Oxford A. In opening opposition, PEP A. In closing government, Oxford B. And in closing opposition, TCD Hist A. Just a reminder, please, to the streaming crew that the Deputy Leader of Opposition would not like to be streamed. Thank you. Or filmed. And on the motion, this House will nationalise and provide public access to the metadata being gathered by online multinational companies. I warmly call upon the Prime Minister to open the case on behalf of Oxford A.
We can only solve our problems if we know them. The information on our day-to-day lives, on the decisions we make, on the paths we walk, on the searches we input online, is trapped in our own disseminated minds and in the logs of companies that we cannot control. Only this policy takes that information back. It puts it out into our hands. It lets us take the power of that information and use it for good rather than for profit. I am proud to stand in opening government. What do we stand for? Firstly, we say that the metadata gathered by companies like Facebook and Google will go direct to the government. They can't store it on their exclusive servers. This information will be kept with government data banks. The government can delete data that poses a direct security threat or an otherwise critical sensitive issue. It will be subject to standard governmental checks when it does so. We'll present this information then in a format that the public and that other companies can understand. It will be made accessible to all. That is crucial to the delivery from the government to the people. Two things in this speech. Firstly, why our metadata is uniquely empowering when it's placed back in the hands of the public. And secondly, how taking it out of the hands of companies by nationalising it decreases company control over our lives and decreases the propensity for abuse. So firstly, why is this data empowering? Why should we have public access to it? Two reasons. Firstly, because to know what we do, to know where we go, to know what we think, or the best approximation of that as is delivered by what we input online in the 21st century, gives an irrefutable depiction of the state of society and particularly the problems of society. So if you note that on Google metadata it is obvious that women do not walk alone at night, that is irrefutable evidence of the state of gender inequality in our societies. People cannot say women are safe in major cities. People people cannot say they don't face the discrimination that feminist groups are talking about. That cannot be refuted when it's in the numbers gathered by the companies we engage with every day. But secondly, and even more importantly, this data allows us to identify and target exactly what we need to change. It allows activists to note, for instance, if there is lower voting sign-up amongst African Americans in the US, rather than just lower voting turnout. That is where to focus their efforts. It empowers people to take matters into their own hands in a way that they're otherwise unable to do simply because they don't know. So why then is metadata unique in giving this informational power? Because firstly, it's so personal, because it's hidden inside our heads otherwise, because we don't know what everyone out there is thinking. The government and most importantly, citizens cannot respond to that abstract lack of information, because what people say or what they don't say cannot communicate to you exactly what they believe or what matters most to them. Their actions is what captures that, particularly their actions online. So when African Americans Google, how can I feed my family with under the unemployment benefit, that is a powerful statement because it lets you know what they're thinking. When you see the Googling of abortion in Ireland, when you see LGBT people expressing that online in conservative states, then no one can deny that problem. We think the personal nature of metadata is what is crucial here. But secondly, this must be free access, because otherwise having multinational corporation status is crucial and becomes a barrier to anyone else accessing it. Making it free puts it back in the hands of everyone, those who can do something about it. Because Planned Parenthood or Black Lives Matter or other minority activist groups can't afford to gather this data on their people in a way that's refutable. We think the power of the government doing this is it takes the greatest company gathering of data out there and it actually delivers it to the people who can provide change. A premise of democracy is that we are empowered to make decisions based on the best information available. It's why we stand, for instance, for a free media, because that communication of information is crucial. That is the most important question in this debate. If we know the information is in the hands of multinational corporations, we say it should be in the hands of everyone, because only with that information are those people powerful. Second point, why taking metadata out of the hands of companies through nationalising is a crucial act in and of itself. Information gives companies an advantage. It lets them tailor their delivery of services, it lets them tailor their advertising or their products to you, not to a general audience or to their assessment, but to the specific demographic advantage that they were able to assess from the existing technological links they have. So Facebook can deliver other services that are more tailored to you than anyone else simply because they're Facebook, not because they're better at that other service. Why is that? Because the closest we can do to getting into someone's mind is the data that they are gathering as a company. Crucially, though, they have monopolies on this online power. Google have a monopoly on mapping technology. Facebook have a monopoly on friend connections. We think that they can target those particular advantages and then sell you other goods that they are not best placed to do to your detriment because someone else could be doing it better simply because they have the control over the maps you want. Anyone, POI.
Why can't the government gather this data with people's consent rather than without their consent?
We think, firstly, that when people engage online, they sign up to the terms of their Facebook program. They're gathering it with consent. This will be a policy enacted by the government, not a surreptitious one. We think this wholly is under consent, but you have to work with multinationals because government censuses are not enough to put this power back into their hands. We think there are two parts of this. Firstly, the government should be telling everyone exactly what anyone out in society knows, putting back into their hands what the companies know, but secondly, we think no company should have unique control of that data. That's why it's not enough for the government to do their own information gathering. In theory, it is positive that Google, for instance, can tailor their additional products to what they know about where people move based on their maps. But the problem is when only one person can do that tailoring, it's to all of our detriment. Because an advantage in mapping delivers an unfair advantage in other areas. What are the harms of that? If Google gets a leg up in delivering self-driving cars simply because they've already perfected Google Maps, you're not getting the best self-driving cars out there. You're not getting fair competition in that field. So So firstly, the price is higher. Secondly, innovation stops simply because you're trapping the innovation in the multinationals who are already dominating. And thirdly, it entrenches inequality because the shareholders of the companies now are trapped into being the most prosperous, the most effective in the future, rather than a free plethora of ideas. The crucial thing about metadata is that what we individually know being shared lets all of us be powerful, both as democratic citizens and also as companies. I am so proud to propose.
I thank that speaker for their fine speech. Could I please also ask that the teams use the microphones for their points of information wherever possible because the audience can't hear. And with that in mind, I warmly call upon the Leader of Opposition to open the case on behalf of Pepe.
Companies that collect metadata earn money in two ways. The first way is by selling that metadata and enabling others to cater to preferences of consumers. The other way is by targeted advertising. We will argue an opening opposition. You will have far more of the latter, and we will explain why that's awful. We will talk about the principle, how this undermines the business models of these companies and all the bad harms that result from that. Firstly, on activism and being able to collect preferences of minorities, etc. I think it's fairly intuitive to know that voter registration in African Americans is already lower in the status quo. I think it's fairly intuitive to say that women in many countries around the world do go out at night to a far lesser extent than men do. But the problem is, a lot of this happens not just because they fear society, but because they often fear those very same states. So to an extent they want to collect data. African Americans who are already afraid of police brutality, who are already afraid of the state being against them, would probably be even less willing to share their preferences and information online. If they do anything on their side of the house, they entrench the existing power structures and they enable plenty of minorities not to have access to liberty that comes through being able to protect this information. What about the principle we want to defend in this debate? The rest of rebuttal will be interwoven. We want to argue that simply companies have ownership of this information. Why is that so? Because the technology that collects the information is something that was developed and created by them. The same way when someone tells me something and I make a conclusion based on that, when I make a conclusion based on information other people give me, I am not obliged to provide that conclusion to them because that is a conclusion I reached on my own. Secondly, on this, we tell you that there is not a reason to share this information with individuals because it's not necessarily personally identifiable. Thirdly, we tell you that you trample on the general ownership of this, that people have it, when you share it with everyone. So in the status quo, only companies can access it. When every single member of society can access information on individuals, you have even less of that ownership. Fourthly, we want to say that people sign terms and conditions. Now, plenty of times this seems trivial to people, but there is already stricter legislation on collecting information of people. People are usually informed that there are cookies when they access a web page. They are aware of the fact that they are sharing their own information. This undermines the business models of these companies and reduces innovation. Why is that so? Because we tell you a large part of revenue from companies like Google that have very expensive search engines, from companies like YouTube that have to run hundreds and hundreds of servers, comes from targeted advertising. So why is that? But a lot of that also comes from selling data. Whether consumers talk about a certain product, whether they talk and what their preferences are of a certain brand, whether people are looking for restaurants in a certain area, what kind of restaurants are those, and different preferences the different groups have. Why is this important? Because when you nationalize metadata, you lose the possibility of these companies to earn money on selling that. Why is that a problem? Well, firstly, we point out on this that a lot of companies, big companies today, already make substantial losses for a very long amount of time. Facebook was founded in 2004. It only started making money recently. What is the problem then? As a result of this policy, you are only able to make money by selling targeted advertising. Why is that a problem? Because in the status quo, when you sell preferences of individuals to companies, those companies are able to provide goods and services that to a large extent cater to such preferences. However, when you sell them targeted advertising instead, or when you have to focus on advertising more, that's when Google is far more likely to skew your preferences and try to sell you a product that you don't actually want. So to an extent, people don't get the optimal outcomes. They get it far less on opening government sides of the house when Google engages in far more aggressive advertising. But secondly, we also point out on this that a lot of services that are great simply will not be free anymore. So things like Google Maps, which are generally useful for a lot of individuals that are very expensive to collect, simply are unable to be free because it is unsustainable to their business model because a large degree of losses. There is also, and this also stifles innovation, a loss in entrance to the market because it reduces their possibility to earn money because firstly, a lot of innovation will not lead to them leading money, but secondly, existing companies, as a result of that, are able to provide far less good services. With regards to cross-subsidizing, opening government correctly point out that Google, as a result of its almost monopoly, is able to provide things like autonomous cars. We would point out that a lot of those things are incredibly expensive and it is unclear whether they will be profitable in the future. Products like Google Glass were an immense failure, even though they costed billions of dollars to create. The problem is when you don't have such high profit margins for those companies, which come as a result of efficiently collecting metadata, you get far less innovation on their side of the house, especially because of large R&D costs that these products have. I'll take a POI now.
As you just observed, innovation requires huge outlay. Without the initial outlay to purchase metadata, to know what people want and to innovate on what they want, how are companies ever to grow?
But there is no incentive to research metadata anymore when you can't make a large profit off it, as they pointed out in most of my speech. So you get less of that research on your side of the house. Why is a state a bad actor at this? Firstly, know that even the NSA, which they would probably concede collecting information on people, is to an extent limited by legislation. You just let them have all the information that is collected by companies on their side of the house. That enables states to stifle on opposition. That enables states to target the very same minorities you care about. And that doesn't happen just in the United States. Know that you are also providing this data to a lot of other countries like China, like Egypt, which already use it to massively stifle their political opposition. The reason the Arab Spring happened was because governments in those countries were not able to fully shut down the internet and were definitely not able to convince Twitter to share information with them. You can't reasonably prevent people in the developing world from accessing this information when you make it available to everyone in a WLD. That means you get far more stifling of opposition and minorities on their side of the house. So ultimately, what is a result of this policy? Not only do you get less innovation and less good products and services provided to individuals, but to an extent they care about people, they care about minorities, they care about ownership of that data. You get less of every one of those. I'm very proud to oppose for the very last time.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech, and I warmly call upon the Deputy Prime Minister to conclude the case on behalf of Oxford A.
When newspapers started circulating, that was massive, because people could start to say the issues that they face, the problems with the government. When we started collecting national data about inequality, that was really empowering for movements which said, look how much the poor are getting poorer, that's why we need to change things. That's been a key part of Bernie's campaign. What we say in opening government is we've reached a new level of data which can allow us to tackle the structural problems society faces and empower individuals and minorities minority groups to tackle these problems using information that was never seen before. Ultimately, we believe that is more important than anything else they say in the debate. For instance, the property rights of large multinational corporations, because that allows us to solve the structural problems which people face. 3 things in this speech. 1, direct responses to opening opposition. 2, quick look at privacy in response to closing POI. 3, how this data is used, whether it will be weaponized by governments or made more useful. Just on this idea that because they created this, they have a right to it, and therefore we're sort of like stealing from them, and that's wrong. 1, note all the things that a state does to help them prosper. For instance, it provides state education systems, which means that their employees are able to be educated so that they can reach those conclusions in the first place. 2, it provides private property laws and limited liability companies which allow these things to generate profits in the first place. Note these were done purely for purposes of utility. The limited liability company was not a concept prior to the 1800s or 1700s when it was invented in the Netherlands. Yeah. Yeah?
But that's a reason to tax them, not to take the entirety of what they have created, because there is still a degree of their own innovation, correct?
So, 2 things. 1, they still benefit from this data. Google can still use this information to do targeted ads because it's public. That means Google can access it too. Second thing, we do sometimes nationalize things when the harms to society are massive. We've seen this in like nuclear power, for instance. We don't encourage companies to develop nuclear weapons, because that's a really important thing for society to have control of. We say this is too. The next thing they talk about is that these companies are going to suddenly lose lots of money. Firstly, as I've explained, they can still do targeted advertising. It just helps others do it more. They say this is going to lead to increased competition. We say competition will only come if those companies can make a profit. Otherwise, it's pretty dumb to go in and compete in a loss-making industry. So at that point, more competition is good because it probably just means better services for consumers. But even if that's not the case, we think we win because I don't think many people use Google because they really target me with ads, or the reason why I have a Facebook account is because I want to make sure that the ads on the side are targeted to my preferences. You do it because of the network effects, because all your other friends are on Facebook. You do it because Google has the best search algorithm. They still have these advantages. Finally, on innovation, and I think this is really important, because as closing government did point out in a POI, this serves as a barrier to others entering. What we're going to point out is that this is particularly important with this data, because fundamentally the sorts of innovations this data allows you to do is it's code. It's just extra information and how you can mine that information to get new business models. Coding is one of the things where you need the least barriers to entry. You just need a really, really clever computer scientist who can come up with something clever. And fundamentally, these are spread all over the world, and they don't just work in Google. So when the US state couldn't crack that iPhone that Apple refused to crack, a small Israeli company could crack that iPhone. We believe these are people who could be trying to develop self-driving cars who are cut out. We bring them in. And seriously, guys, has there ever been a problem with fundraising in the tech industry? Have you seen Silicon Valley now? Have you seen the number of unicorns that exist in plausible points? Now on the weaponization of data. Firstly, on international countries, which I think falls very clearly on our side of the house. And this will be a broad frame I bring through this, which is often the people in power already have access to data. They can already weaponize data. The people who don't have that access is people without power. While, okay, they will still have power, maybe they do some things, we at least level the playing field so that minorities, the weak, those without huge amounts of money to gather this data are empowered. What does that mean in international countries? In the sort of really coercive states where they censor things and so on, these are the states which are likely to be tracking all the data and mandating companies to have backdoors which they can mean that data, which are likely to be monitoring their systems directly, as the US did, for instance, in the recent scandals that have been exposed. What we do is we level that playing field by also giving activists access to that data so they can see, where, police might be moving most or whatever, where there are the most people who are typing searches which are anti-government, which means that they can start mobilizing in those areas and turning them against these governments. Just quickly on whether governments, maybe they ban tech companies because they do this, but note that that's not that bad, because then they just set up a local one. We've seen that with the banning of Google in China. Okay, they have Baidu. We don't get our benefits, but it's just a wash. So, on data and the weaponization politically for this data and whether that's a problem, and also by states. As I've already pointed out, states can weaponize this and do it in developed countries if they use this. Two, it's fairly unclear quite how they see states to use this to specifically target people, because we've been very clear this will be completely anonymized. So for instance, it's not like you can say like there's a Black Lives Matter protest here, let's send the police there. It's just like movements of people, searches. It's very unclear how states will use this to crack down on things. What we've always stressed is this is just more information to solve problems. And secondly, okay, so maybe some of these stats will be bad. Maybe it'll be like minorities are less likely to search for like how to do well in exams or whatever than like more privileged people. What we say, though, is these underlying social trends are often implicitly observed anyway. That's why people often say, like, maybe like wrongly that a minority is more lazy or they work less hard in school. Where we say this data will be particularly powerful, it's not like just reinforcing that, because all the bigots are sure of that already, but in calling that out, saying, look, in this community, actually, African-American children are searching how to do well in their exams just as well as like white kids in the US. We say that's where this data will get press coverage, and that's where it will really empower people who are like otherwise stigmatized by dominant norms in society. Secondly, how can this be used? Like, one, to vote, two, to target policies. So like, if you see like there's people are searching food banks in an area, it means NGOs can target them. Why is this the most important thing? Because the structural problems set up by the state, by poor education policy, by not enough like public sector provision, by like the problems that individuals face, we expose those. We win over moderates when we can call out the issues, to win them over to vote on these issues using this information which wasn't before accessed. We empower NGOs to go to the most needy where they previously didn't have the money to poll and help them live their lives. We ultimately feel that's much more important than anything else in this debate, because fundamentally that empowers the autonomies of individuals. It takes away the constraints that government and society puts on them. That, we think, is the most important thing that's going to win this debate.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech. I thank both top half teams for their contributions and warmly call upon a Member of Government for Oxford B.
I don't have a job at an investment bank, but I have done 1 year of economic study. In that time, I learnt that companies produce goods, for instance, targeted advertising, up till the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. In the case of this opposition, we think companies are already targeting advertising as much as they can humanly get away with because it doesn't change, like it would make them make a lot more money. The question then becomes, how do they target advertising? In closing government, we're going to take opening opposition at their best, and that is to say that targeted advertising is the important thing in this debate, and prove why it is the only way to hold companies to account in how they manipulate what we see if we make that information public. Secondly, some things. So, the first thing I'm going to do in this speech is some responses on the abuse of that power by governments before moving on to that prong, the second prong of the extension about companies to account. Firstly, on government abuse. This debate assumes that the government can pass legislation to get control of that data. So on both sides of this House, we think in a lot of cases governments have that data. The question is, broadly, what it does with that. Let's talk a bit more. Opening opposition proves that it's difficult to know what a crackdown looks like in this particular case, given that metadata is anonymous. A few more things on that we're adding in closing government. The first thing to say is, in the vast majority of instances, the companies opening opposition, the governments and countries opening opposition wanted to rely on already have that data. That is firstly because they can strongman internet service providers into giving them that information. Secondly, in a lot of cases, that internet is run through state-run channels, for instance, in China. Thirdly, business interests, for instance, companies that provide that, things like Samsung, things like Google, are often intertwined with that party, the ruling parties. And fourthly, according to opening opposition, they just have an outright incentive to have that data in the first place. So that means that in places like Egypt, al-Sisi is already sending the troops into Tahrir Square when he sees increases in the number of people on tweeting it. The question is, no thank you, how do we hold those people to account? The first thing to say here is, when that information is public, the government just cannot lie about the number of people that are tweeting in that area. Because when that information is being shown to people, and like other people in Egypt can know that protest is happening before it's shut down in the government. Secondly, even after the event, say for instance that particular protest is shut down, no thank you. It's far easier to call that out in a public setting. When the police are sent in there and a violent altercation breaks out, journalists and people in the public can use that information where possible to explain that it was used by government abuses and not just so happened that a protester, for instance, started that violence. That is just to say, all the government abuses opening opposition wanted to hang their hat on, no thank you, happen under either side of the House. We give people the power, no thank you, and the information that allows them to question why those abuses are happening and in the future reduce them. That is just to say that all of opening opposition's material on abuse falls down in this debate. Secondly, on to the second part of our extension, why this is the only way to hold companies appropriately to account. Opening opposition tells us that companies will transfer profit-making incentives to targeted advertising when they don't have the avenue of selling metadata. That's not really how companies' profit incentives works, guys. They have things like shareholder interests. They want to maintain themselves. They're in a competitive environment. They want to maximize their profit. If Google could make more money out of selling more metadata, out of more targeted advertising, we think they would. That is just to say the extent to which targeted advertising controls what we're viewing is already pretty much as bad as it could be. But secondly, where Google can people can pay Google to show them particular things and that information isn't shown, it's so much worse. At the point at which targeted advertising is at maximum levels, how do we improve it? A few things on that. The first thing to say is metadata is not just about what people click, but also the rates at which they click that. For instance, in order to know how much people in the world like cat videos, you have to know what percentage of cat videos they clicked on. That is just to say, you can then look at the rates at which companies are manipulating what people see and say that is bad. For instance, when companies show people of particular racial groups these same videos over and over again, and you have those statistics, you can observe that company is doing something, perhaps opening, neither team in opening want them to do, and call them out on it. The second reason is, it makes it easier to call out companies that are being sold by things invested political interests. For instance, when you look at a company that has lots of right-wing shareholders and are consistently showing people the Daily Mail, no thank you, you can suggest there's a link there and hold that company to account. The third mechanism is you can force competition. Opening government said you broke up monopolies. What does that mean for targeted advertising? It's harder to control what people, firstly, it's harder to control what people see when if people think their information is being manipulated, they can go to an alternative. When you can go to Bing or Yahoo instead of Google, and I'll take you in a minute, you're so much likely to when you realize Google is screwing you over. But secondly, people just see stuff that makes them genuinely more happy. Like, no one has said this in this debate so far, but people seeing videos that they like makes them a lot happier. Compare that to things that are trying to manipulate their interests. Michael.
Regimes in illiberal states, with the possible exception of China, typically have the worst information gathering capacity at the moment because of technological backwards. On your side of the house, you give them access to the Rolls-Royce of technology, namely Silicon Valley, to do their data gathering. Can you honestly claim that makes them less effective?
Well, presumably those aren't the countries that we're necessarily talking about in that debate. We're already assuming you're going to have some degree of cooperation from these companies. But even in those cases, we think it doesn't require a huge amount of infrastructure to use internet service providers that have to operate under your legal laws and in your country and to strongman them into giving them to you. Fourthly, in this point, on innovation, we think the initial outlay, as I alluded to in introduction of buying metadata, is hugely expensive. Why is that the case? Firstly, Google wants to make a profit, so will extract as much as possible in the initial transaction. But secondly, they're literally in direct competition with the companies that would potentially be buying the metadata from them. That means they want to shut down things like Bing growing. For the same reason, Microsoft buys up thousands of patents from its competitors that it never wants to develop on. We think companies are unlikely to be using metadata or the sale of metadata to other countries. That meant that all of opening government's benefits about people using this for social uses, about people being made happier by seeing things they liked on their newsfeed, were exacerbated. So, what do we have in this extension? The first thing to say here is opening opposition and opposition bench in general exacerbates the worst excesses of government's abuses of information, makes it harder for us to crack down on them and call them out. But secondly, this is the only way that we can hold companies to account and stop them manipulating who we are and what we want. So proud to stand in government.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech, and I warmly call upon the Member of Opposition to open the case on behalf of TCD Hist A.
Thank you for the floor. I'm going to talk about consent and privacy, and then I'm going to talk about the massive abuses this policy is open to, right? So we intend to engage with OG's principle on helping people broadly, regardless of whether we help companies. We do think that OO won on innovation. We just think it's less important, right? They choose to assume that every government, or at least most governments, and that every person will use this data for good. We choose not to assume that. Maybe it's because we're pessimistic. Maybe it's because of all of the wealth of evidence that would show us why, right? We think that our harms apply not just in illiberal states, but in liberal states as well, because we would point out that just because a state itself believes in democratic principles and freedoms does not mean that every person in that state believes in those and believes in civil rights. On accountability of companies, right, we are happy to take the hit that some companies are able to manipulate some people's preferences and interests, as long as we can protect the most vulnerable people from that same same kind of accountability, which you should read as a violation of their privacy, right? We think that vulnerable communities are the most important people in this debate. On consent, because Annie tells us in response to a POI that people just do consent to give this data away because this is a public policy. First of all, no they don't. Why? Because you're nationalizing all of the existing metadata which everyone in this room and everyone in the world only consented to be used by companies. That is a massive violation of the consent of every person who currently uses Facebook or Google. No thanks. So we'd like them to deal with that. Second of all, even if that weren't true, and even for new users, we don't think that that is worth it to limit their access to being online. We think that it is illegitimate to say that people have to give all of their data, even if it's anonymized, to every person in their society in order to use the internet. Because in order to live and work in modern society, you have to have email and you have to communicate online. We think that's illegitimate. Secondly, we think that if people wanted the government and everyone in society to have this information about them, they'd be happy to fill in a survey, right? Like, we just don't believe that everyone is happy for the government to take all of this information. Why is privacy important in this debate, right? We think that people have a right to own their thoughts and interactions to a massive extent, in as much as possible. We acknowledge that, unfortunately, in order to make money, these sites have to use that information to a certain extent, but we think they really only use it for profit, and they tend not to have any kind of illiberal agenda or whatever. But more importantly, the reason that we think that people have this right, or the reason we think it's a good thing, because people just tend to want that and tend to believe that it's a good thing. So even if they can prove that people's privacy actually isn't being violated because the data is anonymous, we think that people have a right to feel like their data is private and to feel safe on the internet. We think they don't. Why? Because people know companies don't really care if they're queer or if they're a certain race or if they're a certain gender or if they're trans, for example, because everyone knows that companies only care about making money, right? Or the vast majority of the time, right? But some people are afraid of their governments, for example, if they live in illiberal states, or even if they live in liberal states like ours, for example. But we think that also people in general would be afraid and feel unsafe in this situation, because it's not just their government who has this information, it's everyone in their society, it's everyone that you've ever been afraid of, and it's everyone who's ever oppressed you. No thanks, right? At worst, this just makes people genuinely unsafe by the abuse that I'm going to talk about in a second. But at best, no thanks. People are afraid to be honest on the internet, right? Because crucially, people don't really understand the nuances of metadata and what people having this information actually means, right? So when you chat to someone on Facebook, if you send them links to different clothes on ASOS, ASOS is able to advertise those specific clothes to you later. Even if actually in metadata or whatever, I don't really understand it, but even if genuinely that is anonymized, there is a personal perception that you have that your data is out there for anyone to see and that it is not private. That means that anyone now is afraid to be honest on the internet. They are afraid, for example, if they're queer, to look at articles about queerness, to engage in queer forums. We would point out that it is incredibly important for minorities in illiberal states and liberal states to engage on the internet, because sometimes they live in communities where they are the only person like them, or at least think they're the only person like them, and the internet is the only safe haven that they have. They steal that from them. That is intolerable, and we will not stand over it. If you believe that your government is against your rights, why would you feel free with this policy? But even if you believe that anyone in your society is against your rights, you also wouldn't feel free, because you have no idea who has access to this data, and you have no idea whether it really is anonymous. Because when companies can see into my messages on Facebook as well as my search history, it just doesn't feel private to me anymore. Closing.
Tallying the aggregation of preferences is important to holding people to account. Would you, for instance, publish the results of secret ballots in elections where people often speak out against the government?
Would we publish the results of elections? But you have to publish the results of, yes, Yes, okay, fine. We would be happy to, for example, hold like massive corporations and governments to account in terms of the private actions that they do, right? And we think that there are ways that you can do that. Things like freedom of information requests and subpoenas if you have suspicion that they've broken the law or if they're doing something bad, right? We don't think that you have to take everyone's metadata to do that. So that's non-comparative. On abuse, right? We think, first of all, this makes hacking easier. Like, yeah, I know it's metadata, I know it's anonymous, but I'm pretty sure that you can explain with a lot of tech jargon and logic that it is a lot easier to steal people's information, to get their IP addresses, to get their names and addresses, to publicly name them and shame them online for being queer, for being feminist, for getting an abortion if you're an Irish woman, if you have their metadata, right? Secondly, if activists can see this data, so can their oppressors, right? It is genuinely galling to us, like with this flag on the table, that OG would stand up here and say it might be useful to know how many women in Ireland are looking for access to abortion. Because you know who else can see that data? Pro-life groups who don't want them to have access to that data, and the Irish state who will arrest those women if they find out that they had abortions in Ireland, right? There is a website that you can access from Ireland where you can get abortion pills delivered. That is illegal. If we are able to see that Irish women and where they live have accessed that website, pro-life groups would demand that the government arrest those women, find out their data, de-anonymise it and arrest them. Pro-life groups would demand that the government crack down on that website and limit access. This is also true for countries where being gay is illegal. This is also true for lots of different things that, like, we just choose not to assume, as OG do, that everyone will use this data for good purposes, so it's just not worth it. We beg you to oppose.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech. I warmly call upon the Government Whip on behalf of Oxford B.
You came here today on timings and information which were communicated to you over Facebook. You interacted with a friend you were going to meet up with on different sites. You spent the morning browsing through articles presented to you by algorithms chosen by Google or Twitter or Facebook. We live in a cocoon of privately controlled algorithms which control which information we get access to and when. On Closing Government, we are the team that recognizes that giving private companies control of our thought process is an enormous liability for any democracy, and we need to be able to hold companies to account. Crucially, the only way we can do that is when we know what they're doing, when we can look at the meta of what they are being presented, what people are being presented with, and how those companies are choosing to give that data. And for that, those companies aren't going to hold themselves to account. The information has to be there for others to hold them to account. So to protect people's ability to access information freely, Closing Opposition showed why this information has to be in the public space. 2 points in this speech. Firstly, how we hold the power of web titans to account. Secondly, how the information availability changes under this motion, including a direct response to the privacy analysis brought by Closing Opposition. So firstly, in terms of how we hold the power of web titans to account, look, most countries have very heavy regulation on press barons. We stop them owning more than a certain portion of outlets. We place large things like state media organizations, no thank you, in order to stop them having a monopoly. We have no such restrictions on web companies which increasingly have much more influence than those groups. The ability not only to generate content, but to decide which other people's content we see. And crucially, which have a near total monopoly on the mechanisms from which we saw that. Because when most people look for facts in a given country, they will be using Google or Facebook, not any randomly selected third parties. So they have enormous aggregated influence over our lives and the way we live them. That means that with a minor tweak, companies can adjust the way people feel. It can adjust the way they are affected. There has been immense discussion about the effect of Twitter on the way political discussion is affecting the US elections recently. You can think about that as what happens when Twitter's algorithm changes slightly so people see different tweets. What happens when Facebook's algorithm changes slightly so you see the things shared by different friends. It gives you a different political outlook being gradually built up by the different things you are exposed to. We are not claiming these companies
companies are doing so at the moment, though there is some evidence that companies like Facebook are manipulating the data people have available to some extent. But we think there is a trajectory whereby they may start to do so, or some may start to do so in future, because of the ties with regimes, which Sophie talked about, because of commercial incentives, or merely because they are owned by people who do have political opinions themselves and do have incentives. So we think structurally it is a threat to democratic and free societies to have this entire apparatus of data sorting in private hands. We can only hold that to account if we know how that information is being shared, if we know how that information is being distributed. Opposition deny us the ability to hold those companies to account. This also, no thanks, takes the form of innovation. Why? Innovation in the tech industry is currently very difficult. It used to be associated with innovation, now it's associated with monopoly and innovation speak. Opening opposition specifically tell us these companies are making enormous profits, which is a sign of a stagnant market. Companies in an actual market don't have billions to throw away on gimmicks like Google Glasses. What that means is these companies gain an extraordinary degree of control over the sorting of this information in a way we think is perverse. At the point where the basis of their monopoly, i.e. the availability of metadata, is distributed more freely, that monopoly disappears and we get a greater ability to have real competition, which means specifically less targeted advertising or lesser things which OO are concerned about. Why? Because if they think people dislike those, which maybe they do, when there is a non-monopolistic system, they have a greater ability to choose other systems which they prefer and other providers which don't have aspects they dislike. So all the things they're concerned about are dealt with by our more competitive marketplace, which removes those concerns. Let's look specifically at opening opposition's case, because we wanted to hold big companies to account. They wanted to ensure they did well. So they tell us four things. They tell us there's more aggressive advertising. They tell us that the services are no longer free. They tell us that there is no innovation because profits are now lower and there's no longer incentive to collect. Note there are a number of contradictions, even at a trivial level, because presumably if there's more advertising, they still have to collect this information, so there's no reason why they're ceasing to do so. But also, you can't simultaneously have more advertising and ads costing more. They were alternative business models, and you argued that these companies would be structurally advised to pursue both. It would be one or the other. So contradictions in the heart of their analysis. 4 reasons we think that is not true. Firstly, we note that when there is more competition, you have to provide more free services, or you have to provide less advertising. Secondly, at the point where the metadata is freely available to everyone, as opposed to provided by one company, it seems more likely the price of the advertising, which is controlled by the price of the metadata, decreases and is more accessible to small companies rather than increases. Thirdly, I'll take closing in just a minute. We think the type of content which is monetized change. At the moment, people who make money are those who sort content. Why? Because they have access to the metadata and therefore they can do the targeted advertising they tell us is profitable. Ultimately, the groups we really value in the internet are those who are producing content, like news sites like The Guardian or other news sites internationally. They currently can't make money on the internet because they don't have access to that metadata. We change who's making the profits from those who are simply sorting data to those who are creating it. We think they're more societally valuable. Go for it, closing.
Okay, you assume that access to the metadata means access to all of the algorithms and all of the other private functions that Facebook uses to manipulate that. Why do you assume that you can actually hold Facebook accountable just with the conclusionary data?
If you can see which information is being made available to different groups and the way in which that structurally takes place, you can work out to a much greater extent than you would otherwise be able to do so, how that is being sorted and how that is being provided to them according to what their preferences are. You don't have access to the algorithm, perhaps it's not perfect, maybe we would nationalize that as well and also make it available, but crucially you do have access to that information, therefore you have a more informed ability to make choices. Secondly, in terms of access to information, dealing firstly with privacy. Look, it's analogous to a secret ballot, as Sophie told you and was scoffed at in a POI. Why? Because the government will reveal the end result, i.e. the end aggregated preference in that, but they're not going to reveal your personal opinions, and therefore there's no meaningful reason why your privacy will be violated. So unless they also want to explain in their final speech why releasing the end results of votes makes people feel less likely to vote and more like their privacy is being violated, they can't show that people feel less likely to leave the internet. But also, at the point where they specifically fall in some of their analysis to accidentally talking about companies and how they're really creepy, and when PRISM already has access to this information, we don't understand how academics having the ability to study it as well, and you being able to physically look at a spreadsheet of how this information is sorted, is the thing which tips you into feeling haunted by this. We need to hold companies to account, and for that we need transparency. Very proud to propose.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech, and to conclude the debate on behalf of TCD Hist A, I warmly call upon the Op Whip.
The logic that underpins the government case, the open government case especially, is that we would be better off if everybody had access, the state had access to everyone's thoughts and everyone's deepest desires all the time, is deeply Orwellian and deeply terrifying. What we bring you specifically in closing opposition is the principled reason why we don't think that should happen, why people should be able to own their own thoughts, and why people should be able to feel like they have access to privacy, even if they still, even if they're correct and things remain completely anonymized. Two broad areas in this summary. So firstly, I want to talk about the a priori right to the feeling of privacy that Dee brings you. That is, we get very little engagement with from Rafi other than a very surface level analogy, which I'll deal with in a second. And then secondly, I want to talk about the political consequences of this action, how Dee wins that clash in her speech. A couple of responses that don't fit in to that. Firstly, on the closing gov extension. As Dee points out in the POI, this policy gives access to metadata, not the way that Facebook uses the metadata, or its algorithm, or its trade secrets. Yes, and it's collected based on the activity of users, not the corporate entity of Facebook itself. These guys say, but now this means you can see when Facebook is providing metadata to specific groups and how those specific groups are manipulating you. No, it doesn't, right? Because now Facebook is no longer providing this metadata to specific groups. It's providing the metadata to everyone, right? So the situation that they're talking about doesn't exist. How can we know that Facebook is manipulating the data in a particular way when we can't even see that it is giving it to particular groups? So that doesn't make any sense. Secondly, on the voting analogy, right? So firstly, we would say there are a lot of states in which people are afraid to vote in a particular way at the ballot box when they feel that they may be under threat for doing so, when they feel like that information may get out there. We would say, crucially, why this analogy doesn't work is that the state isn't the only actor you're concerned with here. The actors you are concerned with are the rest of society, is absolutely anyone can act on this in ways that could be hugely damaging to them. So we don't think that analogy stands. Privacy. So as Dee tells you, we think you should have a right to own your own thoughts. Principally, you should be able to hold on to them. We think an instance when those things are able to be accessed by the state, accessed by lots of people, that delivers a perceptual harm to you that even if nothing happens is something that we think is intolerable. These guys say no, it's fine, right? Because people can consent to this, right? Crucially, firstly, as Dee points out, there are a huge amount of people who have only consented to it being used by companies in the first place. No, thank you. But then secondly, recognize it is just almost impossible to function in modern society without being online, especially in most countries. I'm not even talking about Facebook. I'm just talking about something as simple as Googling something, right? It's really hard to function without that, right? So we say that's an intolerable burden to put on somebody in order to give up their right to privacy. But the point is that perception of what's happening is especially vulnerable, is especially pertinent when you're talking about already vulnerable groups that are already persecuted by the state, groups who feel like they're in a really, really vulnerable position and who feel like they could be under threat, and they probably could be as well, as we'll explain later. So that's especially relevant, as Dee tells you, for LGBT youth living in conservative communities, because quite often the internet and internet forums can be the only home they find, right? If they are now afraid that information could be literally anyone, including the people in their own community, can have access to that makes them less likely to be able to engage in that home, less likely to be able to find out about themselves, and less likely to be able to live their lives in the fullest way. But then secondly, on this, recognize that when you have metadata, it makes it much easier for people with the skills of hacking to be able to use that metadata to get you. That, as Dee points out, that leads to things like doxing, posting people's details online. That leads to things like more abuse of people, and all sorts of horrible things that we don't want to stand for, especially relevant for the minorities that we're talking about here. I'll take opening.
This data is anonymised at point of collection. Obviously, you can't follow people home. Why is newly empowering people the disadvantaged to improve their lives through politics less important than people feeling uneasy because of anonymised data?
So you said in your speech that one of the best things you could do with this policy is know that women are walking home alone because of the demographic information that entails. Crucially, that also means you can do things like know where queer people are gathering if you're in a liberal state, right? So that is a huge harm that you guys have to stand over. Let's talk about the political consequences of this, because this deals with the rest of your POI more directly. So firstly, on innovation, right? I think OO give you a lot of good reasons why this leads to less innovation, because essentially you destroy the ability of these companies to make a huge amount of money in the first place. We think they win on that. But even if OG do win on that, right, we think it's not the most important impact in this debate, insofar as if the fruits of that innovation can't really go to those who are most vulnerable because they're suffering so much, we think that innovation becomes less relevant. The second thing to note is they talk about this policy means we can solve problems, right, because we'll now know what people are searching in Google. Crucially recognize they never actually give a clear mechanism as to what that actually looks like in the real world. They never give a clear explanation of why people knowing what people search for online will lead to problems being solved, except talking about in a very vague way. Next then, closing government say that this is the hold to account stuff, which I've already explained, isn't really in debate. But again, we are happy to take the hit that we might not know what. The way in which Facebook is manipulating it, if we can avoid the awful consequences that we bring. What are those consequences and what are those abuses? So firstly, as OO point out, you have the problem of a liberal states being able to able to crack down on people. What Dee adds to this crucially, right, is it's not only illiberal states, it's also liberal states with particularly restrictive laws, see Ireland and abortion, but it's also the fact that individuals now have access to the information of what these groups are doing, right? The fact that any group within a country can use this demographic data to see where people are gathering, people they don't like are gathering, and intimidate them. We'd say that massively limits those groups' ability to push forward politically and to meet them and to meet, right? And it creates massive fear for those groups throughout communicating online, massive fear from them being able to meet. Look, at the end of the day, even if everything is perfectly anonymized, when people feel that their data is in danger, you limit their ability to exist on the internet, and that does so much harm to them and to everyone. We are so happy to oppose.
I thank the Speaker for their fine speech. Could we please have one huge round of applause for all four teams? Please stay in your seats for a second or two, because the Orcon would like to make